we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Dirty Duck Coffee. If your coffee sucks, it's not the duck. I am Jeff Stanfield with the world-famous Andy Shaver. How are you doing today, Andy?
Very well. Why did you scoot over like into my space?
Because the middle of the camera is on me here, because I always catch myself.
I can move that.
Well, you should move the fucker then, because I try to watch the camera because I watch our guest over here on the big screen, so I set it at an angle so I can see it. You're all about you. You are just an asshole.
Crowded my space.
Yeah. You act more and more like a Democrat every day. Our guest today, from the great state of California, there are some good people out there, Mr. Brian Huber. Brian, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing today?
Excellent. The birdieologist, back in action. Now, you've started a podcast recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a little bit, and then I realized how much work it was, and it's not easy, but hopefully we'll get back into it, get some guys signed up, and just kind of share, what biologists do, specifically with waterfowl. That's kind of the whole goal of it. Share what we get to do and all the projects we get involved in.
Yeah. Andy makes ours look real easy, because it is a whole lot more work than people realize. And scheduling guests, and we have such a wide variety of people we have on, but it's not near as easy as as Andy makes it look. I can guarantee you that. Andy works his ass off on ours.
Yeah, that's getting people on and then getting people on to talk about what you want to talk about is hard, especially when people have their hands tied with whatever organization they're affiliated with, the federal government, state, nonprofits, whatever. Having a conversation around the campfire is a lot different than getting somebody on a podcast and, trying to get some of that stuff out. So hopefully I'll get back into it. We just moved to a new house, sold another house, and just had a lot going on. So hopefully we'll get some more episodes up. But
yeah, I hope so, because it was, it's fun to listen to. It's fun to listen to different people, but you are exactly right. Like, you talk to somebody around a campfire with a couple beers, and you're like, you'd be excellent. You need to come on. And then they get on and they just like clam up, and you're like, oh no, that is not what I brought you here for, bub.
We had a local lady in town a couple of months ago reached out to me, and she's like, how did y'all start y'all's podcast? And I told her kind of the basis of it. She goes, I think I'm going to have one. She goes, if y'all can do it, I can do one. Lady, first of all, you're not fucking very
Thanks
interesting.
a lot, lady.
And second, you better find you a genre that you can kind of get into. But I think everybody thinks they're going to start one and they're going to have 1 million downloads right off the bat, and they don't realize it takes a lot of work. But anyways, I wish you the most success on it, and I have found out, just like everyone else has, if you have a podcast, whatever it is, there is someone interested in whatever you're interested in the world.
Yep.
And so hope it works out for you. What's going on in California these days?
Oh man, a lot. We got we're trying to recall our governor. We got fires everywhere. We got drought problems like everywhere else, and we got our hands full here, man. But still a few birds hanging around that we get to go play with, and we're just staying busy trying to ban as many birds as we can while they're molting right now in California, and just chugging along with all the wrenches thrown our way and trying to dodge them and keep it going.
Newsom's going to win, isn't he?
That's what I was going to ask.
I don't know, man. I just read something on Facebook where the federal government's trying to block the recall because they're all in cahoots with each other. So I don't know. I try and pay attention a little bit, but not too much, because it'll just bring you down.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, what you just said right there gives me some hope that he's going to get his ass beat. I know that Larry Elder is beating him in all the polls, which kind of surprised me. But if the federal government is getting involved to try to keep it from happening, his ass is in trouble.
Right. Could be.
Yep.
And they know that. They don't. They're going to fight hard to keep California red. I know everybody keeps saying they're trying to keep California blue. Everybody says, well, Texas is going to fall. Well, California's leaning more red all the time. They're still a long ways away, but if we had a fair election, California might be red before long. People have had enough of that shit.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but we just try and keep chugging along,
So you're doing this banding project at night right now. Why are you having to do that? Just because it's too hot during the day?
So no. So right now you got to think about what the birds are doing in their kind of yearly life cycle. So right now you have all the broods are pretty much on the ground. So all the ducklings are out there, and they're out there swimming around in kind of the more permanent water, bigger ponds. And you also have the adults starting to molt, right? So they're going to be flightless for about 30 days or so. So the best technique for us to catch those birds right now is we call it night lighting. And, I'm not too sure. I'm sure people do it in other parts of the country, but I know, we really hit it hard here in California. But yeah, the whole idea is the birds are molting. They can't fly. So you wait for the darkest night you can find. We're actually going to drive the 5 hours today right after this and head up there and band tonight. But they're real vulnerable at night. So basically you get in an airboat. We start at about 9 o'clock at night, and we drive around these big, giant wetlands. The current wetland we're in right now is about 2,500 acres. And it's loaded with birds. There's, over 100,000 plus birds in there right now. And so you drive around at night in those airboats, the noise from the motors, the spotlights, the driver's using a spotlight. And it really just pulls all the birds out and kind of gets them moving around. And so you basically hunt them down in that airboat, man. And you got a spotlight, and it kind of stuns them. You shine it on the birds and cruise up to them in the airboat, scoop them up with a fishing net, throw them in a crate, and then we'll set up a banding station, and we'll bring all the birds to that banding station and band as many as we can. So, do
you try to corral them as you're in the airboats to make them easier pickings, or you just one at a time dip netting them?
You're really just picking one out and kind of chasing it down. So it kind of depends. If it's a brood that's old enough to band, you can kind of scoop them up pretty easy. But if it's a molting bird that's kind of flopping around, I mean, you really got a speed to catch them and, kind of get them next to the boat and scoop them up. So what's been fun this year is I finally passed my airboat training class and all that. So I actually get to drive the boats now instead of, getting beat up on front. So it's kind of fun returning the favor to the guys that beat me up the last few years up front. So.
Now, what kind of bird is going to go through a molting period now for 30 days where they can't fly?
All of them.
Mallards, gadwall, cinnamon teal. We're catching some green-winged teal. We're even catching some molting pintail, which is kind of unusual for California. So, but yeah, it's the majority is mallards and gadwall, and that's pretty much the majority that we see here in California, as far as our local birds.
The reason I asked is we start teal season in 30 days, and we've got teal here now. I've never seen flocks of teal like we have right now this early, ever.
Yeah, so if there's an early hatch, that could be young birds, that are flying down there already and moving out. So, typically the molting progression, you have your adult males that are going to molt first because they, as soon as they're done, the hen starts incubating the eggs. That male pretty much abandons her and goes and hangs out with his other males. And so they're going to molt earlier. They're going to molt first. So we get those molting in July, August. And now mid to late August is where we start seeing those females coming in to molt. So I bet majority of those birds, teal that you're seeing, are going to be adult males that are already coming down, or they're going to be some hatchier birds mixed in. Because when we get pintail showing up here, it's almost 90% adult males for the first couple of weeks of that pintail migration.
We've never ever seen teal this many this early, ever. I've never seen it, and I don't know if we're going to have an early winter. We've had more north winds. We've had north winds this summer, and we usually don't have that. I mean, constant north wind, 15 to 20 mile an hour north winds. It's not getting cool or cold, but it's cooler. Like right now, what is it, 82 degrees outside?
It's in the 80s.
It's right a now. Nice day. This is a very unusual August, but this is the third or fourth time we've been this way since July 4th. And so we're already seeing the fronts coming out of the north, and I'm assuming that's why we have some teal here, and we may have had some teal that nested here. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of prediction about this. We're especially in the Pacific Flyway, a lot of our staging areas, where these birds are going to come down and stage and then head down typically. A lot of those places are dry. We've got the Tule Lake, Lower Klamath area that's dry. The Great Salt Lake is at record lows, I think, and so you're probably seeing them just overfly those traditional staging areas and just coming on straight down. And that's what a lot of people think are going to happen here in the Valley, Sacramento Valley, and California too. A lot of birds showing up early, looking for water, and there's not going to be a lot of water for them, So it'll be kind of interesting how everything pans out.
So let me ask you this: how does the molting cycle work? Is it species based? Is it where they nest at? Like in California, these birds are molting now. What about a mallard that's in Canada?
Yeah, it's just it's just based on their nesting season, right? So as soon as they're kind of done nesting and, you know, raising their brood, they're going to start the molting process. So places that nest earlier, there's going to be an earlier molt. Places that nest later, there's going to be a later molt. So traditionally, you know, northern area is going to nest a little bit earlier if they got the resources. And so those birds, like right now, there's tons of molting pintail, I'm sure, up in Canada, mallards as well. You know, it's kind of just this time of year, for the most part, is kind of the molting season, if you will, for just about all the birds.
I thought it was earlier. I don't know why. I thought it was earlier. Do geese molt earlier? Or are they also molting?
Yeah, geese definitely molt a little bit earlier. Yeah, they had, like, especially around here, the Canada geese are definitely nesting earlier than most of the mallards and gadwall. And those are definitely going to be molting earlier. We'll usually do our molt drives for geese in early June. Okay. So definitely earlier for geese.
That's probably where I saw it, because I've seen, you know, geese banding projects, and I guess that's where I saw it. You know, it's a lot earlier, and like you said, it's kind of like first of June. So that's probably where I came up with that in my head.
What's really crazy is that, and it's the way with anything in life, when someone has something bad happen to them, someone else benefits from it. And the North Dakota, South Dakota, Canada area being dry, someone's going to be a benefactor of that. Someone's going to have a whole lot more ducks than normal, and probably a lot of geese.
Or will they, Brian?
Well, I mean, these birds don't just go and wither away and die, right? They move and they adjust. But what's going to happen is they'll overfly those areas, and then their breeding and their production tend to decrease, right? So, you know, most of the hunting, you're hunting that fall flight, and that's your production. And if you have bad production, you know, you're just not going to have those big numbers. You're going to have adult birds, yeah, but, you know, they're not going to have those young, dumb birds that most of the hunters are killing anyways. Another just quick note about that is, yeah, you're going to have this drought year in the prairies and everything, but that's actually, on the long term, that's good for the prairies, because that kind of resets the habitat and kind of is a natural progression of habitat change, right? And so that will benefit those prairies in the long run once they get water back and stuff, because it'll kind of reset the vegetation and stuff like that.
Right. We noticed that here whenever we had our bad drought. You know, everything filled up with, you know, smartweed and just all this natural kind of vegetation. And then when the rains finally did come again, there were fucking ducks all over that shit, just because there was just so much food in there. So everything works on a cycle.
We've got a place behind the lodge. I think it's 5 acres that we flood, and it's probably 24 inches deep at the deepest place, maybe. And it's rained all summer. We've had a wet summer, spring and summer here, and it's got grass all over it. Well, we filled it up now, and now we've got teal in it, which is early for them, but there are food sources there this year. I'm just thinking back to my deal with the Dakotas and stuff. Those birds, I'm wondering if that's why we're not seeing some teal. They flew over those areas. There's nothing there, and they're here now. So we might, in some places far south of that, are going to be better off and have more birds. But Damon Lane, who's a weatherman and meteorologist at Oklahoma City's not reached 100 degrees this year, and he said they won't with their long-term forecast. I guess he says there's 3 or 4 cold fronts stacked, or cool fronts is what that's going to start coming out of the north. So it's looking like we're going to have an early fall, and we're going to have a lot of fronts to push that down. So I'm thinking we're going to have a pretty good duck season in North Texas this year.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got the water. I mean, that's the key element most people are missing is water. So definitely out west here, we haven't had rain, and I can't even remember the last time it rained. And, you know, unless we get some kind of push, these birds are going to be relying on kind of decomp rice water, and that's going to be in short supply this year too. So all the clubs and everywhere else are going to have to use deep well pumps really to flood up, and they're predicting pretty low amounts of water here, at least in California. So sounds like you guys might be better off in Texas, where you've had some weather, and we got nothing here.
I watched a documentary on water. Oh, it's been a year or two ago, but it talked about the water issues in California and how detrimental the almond groves are to y'all's water source.
Yeah, I mean, not too many ducks are going to use almond habitat, right? And that most of that habitat was in some sort of habitat, either rice or some kind of upland that in some way, shape, or form had benefited waterfowl. So we're seeing kind of that orchard encroachment, you know, into the rice country, into the wheat, you know, where a lot of these birds are nesting here. And yeah, I mean, I can't even talk about the water problems in California. I mean, it's way over my head, and you know, it's just really hard to really hard to understand it all. But yeah, all our reservoirs are pretty much drained down, and there's curtailments for all the rice farmers, and it's just not looking good this year. So.
Did you see what they did in Nevada and Arizona with Lake Powell and Lake Mead? They moved them to tier 1 restrictions, I guess, yesterday, and they said it's historically at an 80-degree low. Well, one thing they don't ever talk about, all they talk about is climate change and drought. And there's no doubt that we're in a drought right now, but there's also Las Vegas in 1950 had 23,000 people live there. In 1980, there was 160,000 people live there. You count tourism now and the amount of people in hotel rooms, they're sitting on 1.5 million to 2 million people a day are there. That's why there's water problems. We don't have the infrastructure to provide water for all the golf courses and people that live in Arizona and Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have that same issue here. We have these reservoirs that have been established really long time ago based on the California population back then. And I think we're over 40 million or just some astronomical number. And, it's just the capacity is not there to keep up with that. So a lot of our water, just kind of unfortunately goes out to the ocean, which it needs to do in part. But it also, we had the Orville Dam scare. I don't know if you guys remember that a few years ago. The lake was too full and it was, spilling over the dam, and the dam looked like it was going to break. So I think that really cautioned the water policy people to keep the water low on purpose because they didn't want to have that happen again. And so what it led to is, they're not keeping the water full when they had the water, and they let too much go. And it's just really bad.
So you mentioned something earlier. You said that the Prairie Pothole region is extremely dry right now. And it would lead to bad breeding in that area. But when it dries up, do the ducks leave that habitat or that region that maybe they went to nest in originally? Would they fly off somewhere further north or south or wherever there might be water?
Yeah, so traditionally, when there's low water years in the prairies, you're going to have birds that overfly and kind of into the boreal. Mm-hmm. And there is some good news about the boreal. I mean, most of like the north and northwest part of the Northwest Territories and Alberta are actually in pretty good shape. Even Alaska is in pretty good shape. So the birds that tend to nest more north, like your green-winged teal, widgeon, some of like the ringnecks, birds like that, those actually are going to be pretty good for production. It's really like your mallards, your pintail, like those prairie nesting birds that are going to have really low production. So the pintail definitely fly over the prairies and they go up north, but there's a lot of debate whether they nest successfully or if they nest at all. Sometimes they'll just go up there, people think, and they won't even nest. They just kind of go and hang out up there. But you kind of have more permanent wetlands up there, and my understanding with the prairies and the potholes is there's still the permanent water there. It's those seasonal wetlands that are really missing, and that's kind of where you get a lot of your productivity, your food, and all that resources that those birds need at that time. So
right. So the birds that you're seeing now, you posted a picture. What was it, yesterday? Maybe that bird with the fucked up bill.
Yeah, the duck face,
man.
The
original duck face. Is that just a genetic flaw, or do you think like something happened to it in all of its years? Because it was an adult bird, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it's I mean, we're creeping in on almost 4,000 birds banded this year, and it's amazing all the deformities and the weird things. Did you see that mallard that we caught that had the stick jammed through its leg?
I don't know.
I did see that.
We posted that one. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. So that had like healed completely around it, and so I don't know. I think that it's probably just a mutation that it had when it was born, just kind of a birth defect, I would assume, and she's figured out a way to survive, just figured out a way to keep going. She was in decent condition. I wouldn't say she was in great condition, but yeah, I mean, when you're going through that many birds, it's just amazing how many deformities. We had one that was just completely missing a leg, and you see a lot of weird things when you get that many birds in hand.
So if you get a one-legged duck, do you ban the one leg?
We ban the other leg, yeah. But if it looks like it's gonna mess with the bird's survivability at all, we're not gonna ban that bird. So that one, like with the stick through it, didn't get banned. And, we just sent him on his way.
I'm looking at it now. How the hell does that even happen?
Man, I couldn't tell you. I mean, just he must have just come in real hot and hit a stick just right, and it just punctured right through. I mean, but that thing, we tried to take it out, move it a little bit, and it was in there solid. That thing had grown around there. I mean, it happened a while ago. So
Yeah, you didn't. So if you would have had the proper equipment there, would you have tried to have done something to remove that stick?
it's my old boss. He used to say, we're just observers.
Right.
And so. Sometimes you just let it be. I mean, that guy's been getting along just fine for a while, so we just let him go. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and perform surgery on a duck, in the middle of the night with all this other stuff going on. So no, we just let him go and let nature do his thing. I mean, there's a lot of ducks out there.
Now, what was this bird like? Was he fairly healthy for having a stick jab through his leg? Like,
Yeah, the one with the stick, he was in really good shape. Yeah, so.
it's not fucking with him that bad.
No, yeah. Imagine that guy coming into your sprint.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Now, you banded a Lewistic wood duck. Now, was that hatch raised or was that?
Yeah, so that was part of our egg salvage program. We had so guys that monitor their wood duck boxes. If the nest gets abandoned or the eggs hatch and the mom leaves, they'll take the eggs to our egg salvage program. To one of our hatcheries, and they'll hatch the eggs, raise the ducklings, and then we'll release them, band them, and release them out in the wild. So yeah, one of those eggs was just one of those ducklings was just like a leucistic wood duck, male wood duck. So he was pretty cool looking. A lot of guys commented, "Oh, it's just a silver wood duck," and it's like, this was out of a wild wood duck population box. I mean, it's just the genetic anomalies that you see coming through.
What's a silver wood duck? Is that a thing?
A lot of folks in captivity breed them. Yeah, if you Google silver wood duck, you'll see a ton come up. They're just like a ghost-looking wood duck. They're pretty cool looking, but yeah, they're definitely a little different than that guy. But
It's like the Mandarin wood duck. That's really a Chinese wood duck, correct?
it's just a mandarin duck. Yeah, I mean, there's some really small resident populations of them, but we just assume they're all escapees from aviaries that have kind of started their own population.
Where are they at? Do you see them in the United States, some local ones?
Yeah, they get some get harvested in some of the wildlife areas around here every year, and then downtown Sacramento, actually, there's quite a few down in that general area.
I'll be damned.
But they're, I would just consider them park ducks.
I've never known anyone that shot a mandarin duck.
That's that one over there.
Yeah, we've got one mounted, but I bought it from a taxidermist. But you don't. I've never seen one in the wild. We've killed some Egyptian geese here.
Yeah, there was a few of those in the Sacramento Valley too. I mean, it's hard, unless anybody's doing any kind of genetic analysis on them or anything. You don't know where these birds come from. Like somebody shot a Baikal teal here, which is an Asian kind of teal-looking bird, and it's like, did that guy really come across the Bering Strait from Asia over here? I mean, sure, it could have happened, but you really don't know. I mean, how do you know? How do you prove it? So
Yeah.
I thought it'd be cool, if somebody did like some genetic analysis of it, you can do some genetics and stable isotope stuff to kind of try and determine the origin of some of those rare outlier birds that show
Now,
up.
what do those tests? What do they look for? Like, what would signify that it was from?
They can. My understanding is that they can take the feather, some tissues from the feather, and they can run stable isotope analysis on it, and that'll determine the area that they were eating, because they can base that on the different vegetation that they ate and the different pigments and stuff that they're associated with. So there's some way to kind of generally find that out. I always thought it'd be cool. I know they've tried to do a lot of that stuff on Eurasian widgeon in the Pacific Flyway to try and get an origin, and they were just kind of getting close to all that. So it'll be pretty neat if any of that info ever makes it out.
One of the things that I've noticed that we're having a lot of here, and I saw a bunch in Wichita Falls 2 days ago, is the Mexican tree duck, whistling tree duck, fulvous tree duck. I don't know which the actual word for it is, but we used to, 10 years ago, you never saw nothing like that. They're everywhere now in North Texas. Why is that happening, do you think?
I have no idea. That's out of my flyway. I've never seen one in my life, never seen one in the wild, and I honestly just don't know that much about them. But generally, you just they're wherever they're breeding and their population is probably just in good shape, and they're just probably doing good and expanding. Is just my general guess.
It's just crazy that a duck like that always is along the Texas coast in Mexico, just in the last 10 years has decided it needs to fly farther north to stay in the summertime. And it's fun. I would just be interested. Why is it, if it continues to be this way, how much further north are they going to go? I saw a picture. Someone had a flock of them in Nebraska this summer.
Yeah, I don't know. Just adapting to different habitats, my guess.
Seeing what
habitat change.
What sucks is so many people have so much money now, and they buy these exotic animals like the mandarin duck, or there could have been a Eurasian widgeon that somebody bought, and then they escape, and then you see it, and you're like, shit, did it get over here on its own, or is that just a pet that somebody lost?
Right, and most of the guys, like, they'll clip the wing, or they'll clip one of their toenails or whatever to tell, but it's still, not everybody's doing that, and it's just, you never really know. But I do know that we've banded pintail here in California that get shot in mainland Russia, so I know that their birds are trafficking back and forth, assumingly across the Bering Strait up there, and so I know there's a traditional flight path, from even with the snow geese, they go up to Russia and Wrangel Island and still come back this way. So they're definitely birds trading back and forth there. It's just how do you tease that out and say with certainty where these birds came from?
When you do a banding catch like tonight, you're doing them tonight, right, or tomorrow night? How many?
We're going to start at 9 o'clock tonight, and we're going to go till about 5 in the morning tomorrow.
Oof. How many birds will you catch tonight on an average night?
We're somewhere around 500. We did pretty good last week, and we did 1,500 birds in 2 nights back to back. So that was really good. So we usually shoot for 500, 600, 700, somewhere in that range.
Okay, out of those 500, let's just say you do 500 birds tonight. How many of them will already have a band on them, you think, on average? 5?
Well, when we first start, it's lower, right? Because we're not getting, the problem is there's not a lot of water, so we're kind of confined to the same areas for the most part. So, like last week, we went out and the first run was almost all recaptures from the last time we banded in that area, and so we threw a lot back, but we started catching fresh birds. But in general, I think the first day we banded up there, we had probably 20 recaps, I think, the first couple of days. So we're getting a lot of birds returning to the same area is what we're seeing, and from previous years banded and stuff, and going through all those recaptures. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but it'll be interesting to see where they're coming from and where they were originally banded.
So these are not birds that you had previously banded. These are birds from somewhere else that had been banded?
Yeah, so we there's kind of two versions of recaptures, right? Good recaptures, which are old bands that we can just look at it and tell it's old, and then bad recaptures, we call them bad just because we had just banded them, either the week before or whatever. And so it's still good information, but if we banded a bird last week and we recaught it, it's not really telling us a whole lot of good information, right? So the good recaptures, I think we're up to, I had the data right here. I think we're up to 40 or something total. But we still have to tease out which ones are good and which ones are bad, because, we're banding in the middle of the night trying to process as many birds and as fast as we can. So, they kind of get mixed up after the first couple nights. And
when you capture these birds, what all tests do you run on them? Well, like you test them for, bird flu and all that stuff?
Occasionally. So we had some folks from like the USDA Department of Ag were out there one night, and they tested a sample for avian influenza. We've worked with other partners before, testing them for avian influenza. So that mostly just involves a swab of the mouth, a swab of the cloaca, and occasionally we'll collect some blood from them and sample and let people test that. But for the most part, the night lighting's fun because we call it ring and fling, where you just grab them, age them, sex them, band them, and let them go. Right. Not doing all the weight measurements, the wing measurements, and it depends on which organization we're partnered with for that whatever project. When we're putting those transmitters on, we're measuring their tarsus, their nail length, their bill height, their bill width, all kinds of measurements just to collect more data on those birds. So.
Now, when you put those on a bird, does the bird have to meet like a certain requirement? That way they can
there's a ratio. there's a ratio of bird weight to transmitter weight. I forget what it is, but the transmitters are getting pretty small where it's not a problem until you get into like the cinnamon teal. Start marking those, and the green wing teal, you have to make sure you have the smaller transmitters. But yeah, we're pretty much done putting those out for the time being. We haven't had much funding set aside for those, and so that project's kind of up in the air right now.
See, and do you collect? Where do you collect more data from? Probably just the regular leg bands, just because there is more of them. Or I mean, is there any valuable data that you can collect from the transmitters?
It's I mean, it's different data, right? So for the transmitters, I mean, you can ping them to set every 5 minutes, and so you can get you can get more of their behavior from that, right? And you get like exact migration routes. If we ban a bird here and it gets shot in Alaska, I mean, we just can basically draw a straight line. But if we put a transmitter on a bird, I mean, we get that exact flight path. There's altimeter settings where you can see how high it's flying, how fast it's flying. You can tease out nesting data from those. So, if the bird's sitting in the same spot for a certain period of time, you can assume it's nesting. And so it's just different data. But, it's still very important to do the general banding because that's what they're using in the models and stuff to help set the seasons and kind of part of that equation. So definitely really still important to keep that going and just different data, I would say.
What is the average altitude that the birds migrate at?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head.
Would you rather there be more funding for like the transmitter so you could see the exact path and where they're nesting, or do you kind of like filling your own puzzle out?
It depends. I really want to get more Eurasian widgeon transmitters out because I think that's a really cool little niche and a little glitch in the research. Nobody's really documented Eurasian widgeon nesting in North America. We assume they are, and we catch a handful of them every year when we're doing the pintail rocket netting stuff, and so I would love to see a couple on there. I would love to see, just for being a hunter in California, right, kind of taking the biology out of it. I'd rather, most of the stuff we're doing with the transmitters from the biology side is on hens, right, because you get all the nesting information, which is valuable. But they're doing it, on local birds. Well, we get these birds moving in, and so basically during duck season, we're not doing any transmitters. And so all those migrating birds, for the most part, during the beginning of the year and the middle of duck season, we're not really getting anything on those birds. And so it'd be really neat, from my perspective, to get more on like those mallards in the middle of duck season and then kind of watching them, where they're going. Even though we pretty much already know that we're getting most of our mallards locally from California, like 60 to 70% of the mallards in California are raised in California. But it still would be interesting to see just that distribution, from birds actually in duck season. So.
And then what would you have to do to catch them in season? Just net them?
Just get permission. Yeah, you could do bait traps. You could do rocket nets. Probably wouldn't do the air boats. But yeah, you can catch them. It's just a matter of getting permission on a place during duck season, that would be the hard part, but it's doable. Osborne Lab, I know you guys seen them, and they do a lot more stuff kind of right at the end of the season, and they're focusing, kind of on those birds right at the tail end, but they got mallards, and at that time of year we're chasing pintail, so just different species, different things we're chasing.
Who the hell wouldn't let you in on duck season? Because then like you just got this fresh bunch of banded and cool shit on all these birds that you could be hunting maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You'd think so, but like we're going to start rocket netting pintail first week of September. There's going to be enough down here, and we're going to start setting up for rocket nets to catch them. And I mean, right before duck season, man, anybody that's got water and birds, they don't want any disturbance, because they want opening day to be really good. And, you're shooting rocket nets. I mean, let's be real. It makes a big noise. Sometimes the birds come back the next day, and sometimes they don't come back at all. But so we're actually stuck, surprisingly, on mostly the public lands because that's where we have all the partnerships, and that's where a lot of the habitat's there, and we can really get what we need to get done on all that public land, state and federal property.
Now, I've got a question that's way out there, and I'm going to look like a real dumbass probably, and I haven't done that.
Not the first time.
Nope, I haven't done it today yet, so I'm going to do it right now. Has there been a bird that's in our flyway now? Now, you may not even have a clue on this. That's newer to our flyway than others. Like this Eurasian widgeon 50 years from now, Eurasian widgeons might be a real common bird on the West Coast, just like cinnamon teal is.
Yeah, I mean, you just think of over time, and how these flyways have changed. Like I know there's a lot of research going down in Mexico on the Mexican duck and, its movements and stuff. A good friend of mine that used to work with me is doing a lot of that research. But, like you're saying, the Eurasian widgeon are showing up more and more in the Pacific Flyway. We're definitely seeing more blue-winged teal over here than we've ever seen before. And I know that's probably weird to you guys, but traditionally we don't see that many blue-winged teal. Just like you guys don't see a lot of cinnamon teal. So I don't know if you guys are seeing influx of cinnamon teal.
We've killed more cinnamon teal in the last 5 years than we killed the first 25 years in business.
Yeah. It seems like every year we shoot 3 to 5.
Yeah, and we used to not. I mean, we killed two drakes 27, 28 years ago, and then we didn't kill another one until about 10 years ago, and since then we've been killing cinnamon teal every year now. Now, someone's going to call me up and they'll be wanting to book a hunt to try to kill cinnamon teal. That ain't going to happen. It's just it's a luck deal, but we will kill cinnamon teal this year. I'm almost pretty positive because we have one place that we seem to kill them every year now.
And it's the exact same place every year.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think the shifting flyways, shifting habitats. I mean, it's just just that anecdotal evidence is showing up. Like in the Pacific Flyway now, we traditionally don't see that many blue geese, and every year it seems like we're seeing more and more blue-faced geese showing up. So just things are changing, birds are moving around.
Okay, so explain that to me, because for the life of me, I do not get the different phases of a snow goose. It always goes over my head anytime I've ever had it explained to me. So a blue goose is just a snow goose that's in a phase, right?
Yeah. So if you think of genetic variation and you think of different color variations, some animals are born with lighter fur, darker fur, and those birds are going to survive better in their environment. So what happened is there was a period where snow geese, the environment was better suited to be a dark colored snow geese, right? So dark color, you would blend in more and the predators wouldn't target you as much. So if you're a white bird on a dark landscape, you're going to get picked off extremely fast. And so it's just years and years and years of genetic selection based on, genetic mutation that causes the blue phase. And then that over time is selected to be, better successful in certain areas of breeding.
So what you're saying is now whatever it was that led to a blue goose becoming a blue goose, that area is coming more towards your region in California?
Or just that habitat is moving, and those birds are just moving with that habitat. And we're seeing more blue-faced geese in Pacific Flyway than we've seen in a long time. So, I mean, it used to be extremely rare to just see them in flocks. And now, I mean, every flock you look at, you can pick out one or two, And I spent some time in North Dakota with my buddy, and I was blown away at how many blue geese there were in the flocks. I mean, it was just amazing coming from the Pacific Flyway. And
why is the blue-phase Ross so it's like a coveted bird almost? It's almost like this unicorn.
Yeah, they're just really rare. I mean, you just don't see a lot of them. There's a lot of debate on if it's crossed with a blue-faced snow geese, if it's pure Ross goose. You just don't see a lot of them. I think they're just where they breed. It's just not a common occurrence. But, I mean, I've seen some beautiful ones, and they just tend to have a lot crisper blue kind of to them and more like defined lines. And they just look, kind of their head has like a big blue stripe going down the back, and they're just a lot more rare than the blue-faced snow. So I know there's some folks out here that get them every year, but they're just a really cool-looking bird.
Would there be any sort of genetic testing that could settle the debate on whether it is a pure blue-phase Ross or if they bred with a blue snow?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely – I've seen kind of the spectrum. This one biologist put together like a pretty good spectrum of – blue-faced snow goose, a hybrid Ross, and then a pure Ross blue-face. So, I mean, from my understanding, they're pure blue-faced Ross geese. They're just, like anything, people are going to dispute it and talk about it and claim the difference.
So is every snow goose capable of phasing into this blue phase, or is it all just...
Well, it's all, my genetics is a little rusty, but... My understanding is you're going to have the blue genes, and so the blue geese are going to put off the offspring more likely. But I think that the genetic is there where two white-faced snow geese can breed and produce blue-faced snow geese. So it's just part of their genetic makeup.
And they're blues when they come out of the egg, right?
Yes, as ducklings, yeah. So even like you'll see some folks they'll get a goofy looking bird and it'll be an immature blue goose, and they'll think it's some weird hybrid or whatever. But we see that come through a little bit.
But you're not going to see like a snow goose one year and then like its color goes to like this blue phase of.
No. It's whatever it's born, that's what it's going to be. It's going to stay either white phase or blue phase.
Right. Okay. Because there's debate on speckle bellies, with the bars being genetics or age or whatever, but. From my understanding, all juvenile speckle bellies have this clean belly. It's there's no bars on it, right?
Yeah, for the early part of the year, but they'll start replacing those belly feathers in the middle part of the year, and you'll start to see a little bit of the speckling coming up. But they're called the white fronted goose, right? And that's the white bar above their nose. And that's really where they get that name from. And the juveniles will have kind of a broken bar most of the year, and then the adults will have like a really nice, clean, crisp white bar above their face there.
So the specks with the solid black, the completely black, we've killed sometimes, the whole damn breast is black completely.
The tar bellies.
Will they change in their lifetime, or will they have that same belly their whole life?
They, my understanding is they'll molt and they'll still have like that really dark coloration. So they'll, I don't think it's been correlated to age as far as like really dark. Age correlated with, yes, bars. It's an adult. No bars, most likely a juvenile. But as far as like the intensity of the barring and stuff, I have not seen any correlation or any studies that tie it to older birds versus younger birds.
That's the bird that's growing the most in our whole, out of all the waterfowl. Is the speck population the strongest and growing more every year than anything else?
It's doing really good. Yeah, the reports I heard this year for our birds up in Alaska and stuff, great production, great water year. So we should be seeing a lot of those birds coming down.
Where do you get your speckle bellies from in Alaska?
A lot of them are from just north slope of Alaska, and the Yukon Delta, YK Delta, Bristol Bay, kind of that area, and those birds are all pushing down the Pacific Flyway.
Where's none of it at from there?
Northeast Canada, so kind of northeast Arctic, way up in the Arctic, North Arctic.
Do y'all get any of your birds from there, any of your specks?
Oh yeah, we get snow geese, definitely snow geese from there. I'm not sure about the white fronts, but yeah, definitely snow geese.
We get a lot of our specks from Nunavut, and we used to get a bunch of them from a place called McGrath, Alaska, I think is the name. Tom Merritt Wildlife Refuge or something was the name of a place. And a lot of my old bands, that's where they all come from. And,
yeah.
But yeah, if we shoot a banded speckle belly, it's from Nunavut, like almost 95% of the time.
Yeah, we don't. There's not a lot of banded white fronts that we get in the Pacific Flyway.
Whoever the hell named that the white front screwed up. Like it's speckle belly. It just Yeah. My 6-year-old could be like, oh, that's a speckle belly. Like, and he never even sees the white front. Like, what the hell? Took me forever to figure out why the hell we even called it that.
Yeah,
it's a speckle belly.
So, yeah.
And then so the feet on like a mallard, they change colors, they change hues throughout the year. What does that have to do with anything? Because the old wives' tale is you see this red leg on a mallard and it's from like northern Canada or some shit like that. What does that have to do with?
Well, they're using blood to regulate the temperature in their feet. So when typically you see the darker colors is associated with more blood pumping through their feet to keep their feet warm. So, you hear that wives' tale a lot, and it's really just associated with their body regulating heat through their feet. Because if you think about it, that foot's down there exposed to the cold, to the water. They have to keep blood and stuff flowing through there. And it's also probably somewhat related to diet. They have to get those pigments through their diet to keep that color up. And so, I would see a nice big orange-footed bird who's, looking really good, and I would just consider that guy's in good body condition. That's really what I would associate that with, not necessarily where it came from.
Because that would make sense. Excuse me. because your earlier birds that you shoot, October, November, the early mallards kind of have like this yellow foot color, and then as it progressively gets colder throughout the winter, that's when you see the shift in their foot color. So it's probably, like you said, it's probably just good diet and then healthy blood flow down there.
Right, and you also got to think those birds that you're shooting early are probably going to be the younger birds. Mm-hmm. And those younger birds are probably not as good as, getting the resources to have those nice flashy colors to attract a female. That's really the ultimate goal, is to get the resources, to grow your feathers, to look pretty, to attract the female and to have her select you, And that's really what they're thinking about most of the year, trying to compete for those resources. And those younger birds, they have to learn that process. And so you're going to have the older birds are going to get to those resources first and have those nice, pretty colors first to attract a female.
Now, when is that pecking order established for breeding that spring?
It usually, it'll start November.
Wow.
We'll start seeing kind of, the pairs kind of start forming, the courtship flights and mallards. Definitely the pintail will start their courtship flights a little earlier, and we'll start seeing those mallards, working hard to attract the mates and sticking around. And then, for us, by the time December, January rolls around, there's a lot of pair bonds already established and already formed. And those, kind of some of the late season tactics for us is, you want birds find comfort with other birds, but they don't want to be too close, so you kind of set out a little pair here, pair there, and and kind of make it more relaxed look instead of like a big party, come on down here and party
right
look. So
I've noticed that a lot too, especially like with and there's a couple different reasons. A lot of times later in the year, the fields that we're hunting in, they're kind of lower on food, so they'll naturally kind of you'll see the birds the night before, and they're naturally kind of just spread out just a little bit more. But like you said, though, they're probably also, that kind of groups have been established, and they're like, we don't have to go over next to Jim Bob and Tammy because they're going to slip you a Mickey, and, then you'll be going home with Jim Bob instead of me. So
right. Yeah.
I do notice that later in the year, kind of like you said, you just set something a little bit looser and pairs here and there, and
Yep. And then you have your birds like pintail, widgeon, and stuff that just stay in big groups generally, but they're forming those pair bonds, probably a little bit later. So just depends on what you're targeting too.
So how does a mallard get laid? Like what are his tactics? Not physically, but like what does he do to attract that female that's out on the marsh?
I think he's a rapist.
Well, he's got to
we can't say that anymore. We have to say forced copulation, so we have to be careful. Yeah.
Forced copulation.
They changed it in the duck literature.
You got to be shitting me.
Well,
forced copulation.
I always thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah. But no, they really are just battling it out. The whole name of the game is the males choose who do they display for, right? So they choose a female that they want to display for, and then that female chooses the male that they perceive to be the most fit or the best in shape. And so you have these males, constantly competing with each other, trying to, show off in front of the other one, trying to find resources. If a male has a good resource and he leads that female there, that's probably brownie points for him. And then just fighting off the other males, and really just showing, displays. They'll try and, they're pretty for a reason. That's why the male ducks are so beautiful, is they're trying to attract that female, and they're trying to get her attention, and they're trying to keep her. So once they kind of establish those pair bonds, then they do they call them mock copulations, where they're actually pretend to have sex and kind of see if it works or if it doesn't work, and they'll go from there, and then they'll breed, and once you do hear about the duck rape or forced copulation, and that kind of happens later, once the females are on their break, or when they get isolated or something, and that's when the bachelor groups of males actually will kind of target birds and go after them and force themselves on them. So that's definitely a real thing.
Now, when that happens, go ahead.
And I would say mallards are more aggressive, than other birds for the most part. But mallards and gadwall, that's what we see around here. But yeah, they can be pretty aggressive.
Now, when the forced copulation, that's a nice word. Kudos to whoever came up with that one. When this happens, is the male that was originally paired with her, is he still in the picture, or is he already gone and done by then?
It could be a little of both. It's hard to say. It just depends on what the timing is. What happens a lot of times is, the female is incubating her eggs, and she has to take a break, right, to go get food and water for herself. So a lot of the times during that period, you're going to have like those outside males come in, and that's when the original male potentially is still around, but he might not be either. He might have taken off and left her, like a bad dad, and went and did his thing and left the kids and mom on their own.
And then, so like, how do they know like when she's in season?
It's just the hormones and everything, I think, changes. I'm not really sure, but they just, just the way they figure it out, kind of like deer or ruts, they just kind of know when it's time.
Right.
And the hormones and stuff change on both a male and female, and everything just kind of happens.
Because, you got these horny males running around, and it's like you'd figure that they would know, like, she's already laid her eggs, she's incubating eggs, and like she's not what you would consider in season for this forced copulation to pass on genetics.
Yeah, they can, right, but they can like re-nest and stuff, and they actually have like a pretty crazy sex organism inside the females where they can like store semen, right, semen from other ducks, and they can like excrete it in when they're producing the eggs to fertilize them. And so they can almost store from like different males and select kind of how to release it to fertilize the egg. It's pretty interesting.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. I did not know that.
Oh.
So how long do you think that they could store it for?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't imagine super long, but I know that they can for small periods of time. I'm not exactly sure what the time frame is on that.
That's fascinating. And so yeah, you got these males and they're peacocking out there trying. So will they get multiple?
They're rutting. Yeah, they're just.
Can they get multiple hens like coming their way, and then like to hell with you?
Yeah, usually. I mean, for the most part, the traditional, they're going to establish a pair bond. They're going to stay with that partner. And ducks, they typically choose a new mate every year, right? Where ducks are going to mate for life typically, geese mate for life. Ducks pick a new mate every year. But if you had a mate last year and you were successful, then we've seen it where they're going to still select the same mate year after year, just because it was if it worked last year, let's do it again this year, kind of thing.
But I don't know how the hell they keep their mate straight. You get this great big winter mass of ducks and geese, and then like they fly off and they're like, oh yeah, there she is. There's that old ball and chain. I didn't lose her.
Well, fuck no. She's usually got five drakes and one hen in a flock.
Well, how does she know which drake is hers? How does she know who her beau is?
It's the gangbang cycle,
Jeff.
Then you think of the geese, right? Yeah. You got all the geese that mate for life. I mean, how do they know each other? They get mixed up too. I mean, it's crazy. It just makes you understand that they have a more social recognition than we give them credit for. I mean, we look at them and it's just a goose, but they can. I mean, they are obviously picking out individuals.
They all look the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's fast. Like I'm looking at a Canada goose here, and there's a Canada goose beside it, and it's got a white cheek patch and a black head. Aside from that,
yeah,
I don't know what the hell.
I mean, vocalizations. I don't know what they're cueing in on, but there's somehow they're able to identify individuals. I mean, it's pretty apparent with their nesting, picking mates continuously.
Do you remember 10 or 15 years ago when there was the paint company come out that had the paint that had some kind of white, was it UV?
Yeah.
That because they say waterfowl can't distinguish colors.
No, they say that the argument with this is that they think, and this company's gone now, so I'm guessing it was bullshit. They thought that waterfowl saw on the UV spectrum. So if you painted your decoys with this special paint that was on the UV spectrum, that it would be more attractant to ducks and geese.
Yeah, I've heard that too. You're not supposed to pee in your decoys, right? Because they can see the.
Right.
I've never heard
I don't
that.
know. I mean, ducks. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I know they definitely see different than us, right? Because they have their eyes placid on both sides of their head, so they don't. We have a unique vision where we're focusing with two eyes on the same thing, where they have just a complete different vision, and I think it's just hard for people to perceive that difference of seeing, right? Like you think of snakes and they're sensing heat,
Right.
or bats using echolocation. I mean, it's just crazy, the different processes that animals can use, that it's just hard for a human brain to kind of comprehend. I mean, I can't comprehend how a bat uses echolocation to pick off bugs in the middle of the night. I mean, that's just crazy, So, yeah, definitely they don't see like us, but I'm not too sure about that UV stuff. I mean, I've heard it. I just, I laugh at the don't pee in your decoys thing. I think that's always pretty funny. So.
Listen, I'm not walking away. I'll walk away to take a dump, but I'm not walking away to take a leak. Like, it's going to happen right there.
Yeah.
I kind of equate it to what I think a bird sees like. It's kind of like that GoPro, when it's got like the wide vision. That, in my mind, that's kind of how I think a bird sees. Like, it's wider, and you're more detailed on the sides, but kind of in the middle, it's kind of like this fucked up, little horseshoe looking thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that, I mean, you look at all the flagrant colors that these birds have. I mean, they're obviously picking out detail, but as far as how much detail from the hunting side of things, I mean, that's where you're getting into the what's if your decoys are more realistic, you're going to shoot more birds, or how fast they're flying by, or what they're seeing, picking up on the UV paint or whatever it is.
It's like it's always funny when you're putting out decoys, and like especially back in the day when we used to use shell decoys, and you'd have 36 shell decoys and you'd have 33 heads. And guys, well, there's not 3 heads here. If that bird gets close enough to notice that decoy's not got a head on him, he's plenty close enough for us to shoot. So don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah. There was a period when I got into flocking all my decoys. Right. I went and flocked my whole little refuge spread, and I mean, I liked the look. It gave it like a real softer kind of feathery look to it. But whether I killed more birds or not, man, I couldn't tell you. I just know, setting up for goose decoys. If we set a big spread and we leave those decoys out overnight, and it gets that kind of moisture on them, I mean, it's death to the geese. They're not going to come anywhere close with that big water shine on them. And so that flocking definitely works in that situation because it softens it up.
Yeah. I think, especially with like dive bomb, because they've got the flocked heads on the Canadas, I think it just adds like an extra bit of contrast to where you stand out in your fields. But it's funny. About 7-8 years ago, we got on the full body train. Like, that's all we were running was full bodies. And when we started switching back to silhouettes, our clients were like, wait a second. Like, how is this going to work? Because, like, the past 2 years we've been using these big full bodies, and now all of a sudden we're doing these 2-dimensional decoys. Like, it ain't going to work. But, and then you go into the science of how a bird sees, and, like, we're going to be fine. But it's amazing that how many people, and I see this from professionals, they bunch their decoys. A lot of times are just, their silhouettes are just like way too tight. And it's like, listen, that bird, you got to figure out how that bird's going to come in, and like, if it's that close, it's not going to see half of your decoy spread. So like, you got to spread these things out just a little bit more than you would a full body.
Yep.
But
yeah, and I've never really used silhouettes until like the last couple of years, but it was kind of neat. Like, if you set them right, and the birds are flying, it actually gives a feel of motion because they're disappearing and showing up. And I never really thought about that before until we started using some here and there. So
it makes a difference for sure. So when you're doing this night lighting, will the broods like bust up, or will they for the most part try to stay together?
They mostly stay together. So if you see a brood, there's usually going to be a mom with them. And traditionally what they do is the mom's going to act like she's injured, and she's going to kind of flap away. And so you go scoop her up first. So you try and keep them together, and then you come back, and the brood usually we're not going to grab little tiny ducklings, right? We don't want to, if they're not going to fit a band, we're not going to mess with them. We're not trying to break up, their brood with the mom and stuff. So they've got to be pretty old for us to pick them up, not quite almost flight capable, but getting closer to that stage, at least I'd say 4 weeks old.
Right.
And so, typically they're going to just stay together, and you can just scoop them right up pretty easy when the broods.
What I can't figure out, because what bird was that in Michigan? that when we went to
it was a killdeer, and it did the same. It would push you away from it.
Killdeer.
Yeah, killdeer.
But
Yeah.
I think it was male and female together, and the male would run off, and he'd act like he was injured. The female would stay on the nest. She was a mean bitch too.
Yeah.
But it fascinates me that more birds don't try that tactic. Like have the male stay around all year, help the female out, but they just leave them.
Yeah. Yep, they leave them. Well, you got to think about where they're nesting too, right? Those hens are nesting typically in upland field cover. You throw a drake in there, he's gonna stick out like a sore thumb, right?
That's true.
That nice fully colored drake. So, just different habitat, different strategies.
I saw something interesting. We were in Mexico just last week, and they had a guy that would come there with a hawk to the resort. I've never seen this before, and he had the leather glove on and stuff. And this hawk would fly up and land around the hotel, and it was keeping the blackbird, crackles, or what are they called? Grackles. They was trying to keep the grackles away from there. And one of the grackles had a nest there, so he would bomb at this freaking eagle. And this is just some Mexican hawk or eagle this guy had, but it was to keep the grackles away from the resort, away from the food court and stuff. And I've been to Mexico a dozen times. I've never seen them do that before, but they had a guy that had a just worked a bird, and I guess he worked all the different resorts and would go from resort to resort. And that bird would get up and fly and perch himself around the resort, like around the pool, and it would push all those birds away, and then they'd go to the next place.
Yeah, just figure that out for a golf course and keeping Ken the geese out of there, and you'll be a millionaire.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, does anybody know why the goose doesn't display these marvelous colors? Because, you think about a pheasant and the male, bright and shiny, ducks. Are there any ducks that are all the same color?
Mexican you get into
ducks?
kind of the Mexican ducks. Even the gadwall are really kind of
close.
drab, considering. It's just different selection styles, just different strategies for breeding and, dimorphic or monomorphic birds, So like your dimorphic, two colors, male, female, different sexes, they're just more or less different strategies, that these birds have kind of evolved and just taken on.
It's crazy to me how we're here. I don't know. Just like when you factor in the whole spectrum of things, the fact that here we are now, it's amazing that these birds got here. And it's amazing that they do it every single year successfully. Because,
Right.
You'd figure that hen, she'd just be she's literally a sitting duck for a predator. But she blends in so well with camouflage. And then the bitch of it is you raise these ducks, and then you're even more handicapped because you got to make sure that your ducks make it to water if a predator shows up. It's fascinating to me that.
And, almost every brood, there's going to be ducklings that get picked off or killed or whatever. So, think about being that mom duck just watching their kids getting picked off left and right, just trying to lead them to safety. It is not easy being a duck, especially, a female duck nesting. So it's definitely tough.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's good stuff. So you've got a 5-hour drive now?
Yep. We got a 5-hour drive. Go meet the crew, meet the rest of our, our team, and go ban ducks all night.
How many more nights are you going to do this?
This might be the last night. Yeah, we're making. This might be our final push. So we're kind of trying to. We're closing in on 4,000 birds, and we need about 600 tonight to make that happen, and then we'll be doing pretty good. So.
And then what'd you say next is rocket netting pintails in September?
Yeah, usually the first week of September, we kind of, do our little dove hunt September 1st, and then we really get serious about catching pintail. And usually that time of year, there's enough in the Sacramento Valley where we can start chasing them and start shooting rocket nets at them and catching them.
When's your slow time of year? Hunting season?
Duck season,
yeah.
Surprisingly, yeah. It works out pretty good if you like to duck hunt. But that's, we catch up on our reports, we catch up on our, getting all our data analyzed, getting all our bands into the BBL, just all that busy work,
Right.
And then we also get involved with the hunt program with CWA. So we actually I'll go and host hunts, at some of our properties and kind of take care of the hunters and make sure they get out to the blind safe and all that stuff and hang out while they hunt. So
perfect. Well, listen, man, we really appreciate you coming on. I know you got a long drive ahead of you and a hell of a long night tonight.
That 5-hour drive's 32 miles. Don't let them kid you, it's California.
windy
No,
roads.
it's a little longer than that. Yeah. Hopefully the roads aren't all closed with all these damn fires everywhere. So
What started
we'll
that?
figure
Was it a cigarette butt or was it just natural?
I'm not, I think it's part of the power lines on the big fire that we got going. The Dixie fire is pretty big. I haven't heard 100%, but it sounded like there were some down power lines kind of by the origin of where the fire started. Then there was another one just started south of us. So yeah, they're all over the place. California's burning up.
California is either mudslides, wildfires, Santa Ana winds, or earthquakes.
Yeah.
But
I mean, in 2014, it was flooding too,
Yeah.
so it's just crazy, the ups and downs.
Everybody wants to live out there at the land of fruit and nuts.
that's right. It's a beautiful place. Other than the fires and the mudslides and the earthquakes. Have you ever
And the
been through
Democrats.
Have you been through an earthquake?
I mean, I've felt them, but I wouldn't say not like close to the epicenters or anything. Nothing really crazy. But,
It's just
when I lived in Tahoe, the house would definitely shake a few times.
is that freaky?
Not too bad. I mean, it was never bad enough that we were worried about it. You're just kind of like, what the heck? It happens. You're like, what is it? You're like, holy crap, it's an earthquake, and you kind of, and then it's over. It's not. It never really been anything crazy. But what was it, 92 or whatever, when the Bay Area and all that crazy earthquake happened there? I mean, my grandparents lived pretty close to that, and they had some cracking in their house, and they definitely felt it. But
Yeah, that was a bad one. That was the year of the World Series it happened.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There was another one in like the early 1900s in San Francisco, wasn't it? Like swallowed those cable cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Wipe the fucking town out.
Yeah.
Here's the thing is like a tornado, you get underground. If it's flooding, you get on your roof.
Right.
For an earthquake, what are you supposed to stand in your doorway?
And it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Where we're at in California, my little zone just north of Sacramento, we're really not too close to all that earthquake activity. A lot of it's the Bay Area, Southern California, the San Andreas Fault down south. So it's funny you guys think associate it with earthquakes, because in my mind, I mean, it's like, it's just doesn't happen around me at all. So not that big a deal where I'm at yet.
I'd shit my pants.
We jinx the shit out of stuff. So if you live in Southern California, you better be prepared. There's going to be a fucking earthquake next week.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here, Brian. Hopefully you slow down enough you can crank up that podcast again. And if you ever need any help or anything like that, I'd be happy to help you with that. So.
And y'all have a great season. God bless
good
you,
luck
and
to
good
y'all
luck
this
to
year.
y'all.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on. And man, maybe I can make it out there someday and get a sandhill hunt crane in or something.
We would love to have you anytime.
Anytime.
Just make your way out here. Say when.
Sounds good.
See you, bud. Be safe on the road.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Got it.
You made it that time, didn't you?
Woo! Fast hands, Jeff. Fast fucking hands. Just like that. Fast hands. Could have been a wide receiver.
Yeah.
With as fast as my hands are.
Uh,
Bruce Lee ain't got shit on me.
He's dead. I hope not.
Exactly.
Did you see today where the leader of the Taliban is taking more questions than our president has from the U.S. press?
Well, he's got a lot going on, Jeff. He's got a lot of good news going on if you're a Talibaner.
I saw where all the women teachers in Afghanistan did not go to work today.
Can you blame them?
No, what a fucking mess. Horrible, horrible situation. A lot of prayers for the Christians in Afghanistan especially, and for our soldiers getting to bring home. So I'm glad our soldiers are coming home, but it's a bad deal.
This could have been a little bit better thought out, probably, but
Everything this administration has touched has turned to shit.
I heard something interesting. So, did you watch Biden's press conference yesterday?
No, I ain't wasting my time.
Okay. Did you see any of the highlights from the press conference?
I don't think there are any highlights of it.
He blamed Trump.
Of course he did.
said this was an agreement that was agreed upon by President Trump.
Well,
blah,
so
blah,
was
blah.
the border wall and everything else, and we fucking threw that away.
Exactly.
Was that what you was going to say?
Yeah. Why
No.
is this the one agreement
Yeah.
that you were like, oh, can't do away with this one?
It's because they didn't.
You've done away with
Pipeline?
You've done away with the pipeline. You've done away with it's not coming to me right now.
the
The
pipeline,
Paris
the
Accord.
wall,
The Paris Accord.
yeah, everything.
You've undone everything
That was
President
working.
Trump has done. This is the one thing where you're just like, nope, fuck it. He did it. We're gonna, by God, this is the one we're gonna honor. This is the one, right?
The deep state's taking a big L on this one.
The border, you've reversed it. Everything from top to bottom that President Trump did, you've reversed. But this is the one thing where you're just like, that son of a bitch did this.
Logan Pyatt had an interesting thing this morning he was talking to me about.
He tried to FaceTime me today.
And he says that No, he's a Q guy.
He's a Q guy.
Isn't
that something you got to like put a disclaimer?
Yeah.
He's got an interesting
he's
point.
He's a great guy, but he's
now,
a Q.
Hold on. He's a Q guy, so let's just see where this goes.
He says that Afghanistan and Pakistan will be at a war here in a couple of years over cobalt. And then the deep state will go in and save it so we can get the cobalt from Pakistan.
I've read that already. That China and Russia are going to get the cobalt.
Well, he thinks that the deep state is setting this up to be a war with Pakistan so the United States can go get it. Just telling you what.
That sounds like something Q would say.
Yeah. There is no doubt about it. There's something going on out there besides that we don't just. The Democrats don't, or the deep state doesn't agree with Trump on something. Just move about. Trump would have had it better handled. First of all, those people were scared to death of fucking Trump, and they wouldn't have done this shit. I don't know what the answer is.
We can't say yes or no.
We can't keep that. You can't. It's kind of like saying in March of last year we should have done this and that. Right. It's easy to say that now. We needed to get our kids home years ago,
but there's a reason that we have not had another 9/11.
That's exactly
years.
right,
and maybe it was us being over there.
Yep.
But I don't know. There's so much that has gone on the last 24 hours. I can't go on social media. We announced the giveaway. It came out this morning.
Your phone been blowing up?
It and I cannot go on social media because everybody's a fucking expert on what we should be doing in Afghanistan.
I'm talking about, did you be in a lot of blown up on the social media?
Yes, but I'm telling you, I cannot go on social media to see what's going on, to look at what's going on with me.
Oh, I've been looking at our stuff. I'm not really worried about all that shit.
You go on Facebook, and everybody's this 5-star general.
Yeah, but they'll change that in a day or two. It's
Twitter's the same way. Instagram's the same way. And I just, it's way too depressing for me.
I don't.
So
I didn't watch the news. I didn't watch the press conference. I made a snippet before the press conference of what he was going to say. Blame Trump. Blame Trump. If you're an LGBTQ, we got all those people safe. We brung back the rainbow flag from Kabul that we'd hung up. If you want to have a sex change operation and you're in the military, we'll let you do it. And we're going to give you 25% more money for your food stamps so you can get through this pandemic. The Social Security people are fucked. We're not going to do nothing for them, because they paid into the system, so we shouldn't give them a thing back. And we're going to blame Trump some more. And that's basically what happened yesterday.
Did you see? Oh, he didn't mention Social Security.
No. But that is
a fucked enterprise, though, and we've argued over that.
The people paid into it. It's their money.
It's a fucked enterprise, Jeff.
They paid into it.
I understand. What generation is it that's going to just be done with it?
I guess when everybody that paid into it's dead. I don't understand where you get off that it's an entitlement. It's not.
I'm not saying that it's an entitlement, but I'm saying it's not gonna be having any money by the time I get there.
Oh, fuck. They've been saying that for 40 years.
Jeff.
If the politicians leave the fucking thing alone, it'd be fine.
You're correct, but they're not
stealing. They're not going to get rid of it because they're stealing from it.
They're not going to leave it alone.
Well, of course they're not going to leave it alone because they're stealing from it.
But what generation do we rip the Band-Aid off? Like, listen, there's not going to be any Social Security. It's a dead horse.
The politicians will never do that because they've got to take that money all the time, so they can spend it on something else. They rob Peter to pay Paul.
I'll never see a dime of Social Security.
Well,
I'll never see a dime of it.
You may not live long enough to get to it. You might be right.
It ain't going to be around.
It will, too.
It ain't going to be around, Jeff.
Okay.
Trust me.
How old are you?
33.
33 years old. So in 29 years, it's going to be gone. Bullshit.
Gone away.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Do you want me to look it up?
Look up what? There's nothing to look up.
When it's going to go away. When the experts say...
Who the fuck is the expert?
On Social Security?
Yeah.
I don't know.
A politician?
We need to find
That's
one.
our problem. We got a bunch of fucking politicians running shit, not people. Let the military be ran by the military people.
I'm talking about Social Security.
Well, Social Security is ran by fucking politicians, someone they appoint that don't know shit, just like everything else in our country. You know? Let the guy in California be in charge of the ducks that knows ducks. Don't get fucking Gavin Newsom, one of his buddies he's going to give a job to, that's going to be elected or appointed as president of California DNR or whatever the hell they call it. Same with us. Who sets our fucking waterfowl seasons?
Somebody that's
some dipshits that don't have a clue what they're doing.
They're on the coast.
2 of them are. The other 2, who knows where they're at?
The last official projection by the Social Security Administration indicated the funds could run out in 2035.
Mm-hmm. Well,
14 years. I can do that math.
Yeah, well, and it won't happen. At which
point 79% of the promised benefits would be payable. Checks are going to bounce, Jeff.
It'll never do it.
They're going to bounce. What other Paul are they going to find to rob?
They're going to keep pulling money in. They're not going to cut it off because they don't want to take all that money away from themselves. That's what you don't understand. Every week they get a big fucking bunch of money. They're not going to turn that down.
I'm not saying they're going to turn it down. I'm saying they're not going to be able to write a check.
Oh, they'll be able to cover it. We're just going to pass the $3 trillion stimulus package.
That is true.
So we can give a bunch of more fucking money to a bunch of fucking idiots that don't want to do shit.
It'll be the Social Security bailout. We need $4 trillion to bail out Social Security so that these elders that have paid in can get their money that should be in an account waiting on them.
That's right. It should be.
But it's not.
Because the thieving bastards are politicians. Ain't nothing more worthless than a fucking politician. From either side of the party.
It's a little ugly. If you just
Start out with George Bush, Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, all fucking worthless.
Anyway.
Worthless is Michelle Obama's penis.
This was a very good podcast otherwise.
It was a very good podcast.
Until you brought it down with that Afghanistan talk. And Social Security.
What Afghanistan talk?
You brought it up, Jeff.
You said, did I see the press conference? I said, hell no.
No, you brought it up before.
No, I don't really care. I feel sorry for all the soldiers that served over there, all the soldiers that were lost over there. God bless them. 2 people have died for you, Jesus Christ and the U.S. soldiers.
Do you know we have not had a casualty over there in 18 months?
That's good.
18 months.
It's because we had a real president.
So.
You think there's some voters' remorse right now? Honest Democrats that really do. You think there's voter remorse?
I hope so.
I can't imagine people that are thinking,
But
things are really looking good nowadays. Midge, looks good. I watched Good Morning America today, and by gosh, we're doing good. We got the boys coming back from Afghanistan, that border wall down there. Yesterday, 3 of the mainstream medias, 47 seconds is all between the 3 of them on the border last week. That's it. They didn't talk about shit down there.
Wow.
So Midge, in the middle of Buffalo or Utica, she's thinking that things on the border
Peoria.
are really nice.
She's in Peoria. We all know where Midge is.
The border's all secured. We got those poor little
I don't
bilingual
see
kids
how, I don't
that
see
need
how
education.
I don't see how the mainstream media avoids this debacle, but they'll figure out a way.
Because we buy sponsorships, and not we as in me, but people do. Quit buying local sponsorships at your local ABC, NBC, and CBS and Fox. If you quit doing that shit and buying local, eventually the nationals will catch up. That's what you got to have to do.
I'm doing my part right now, Jeff.
Boy, I've caught more shit over your Roadhouse fans.
Everybody loves Roadhouse, Jeff.
No, they don't.
Everybody loves
Everybody
Roadhouse.
just says they can afford to take Midge there and spend $100. That's what it's about.
Midge in Peoria.
Yep, they're going to Texas Roadhouse.
Well, yeah. You're going to get a steak that is a 7.3 for $20.
On a scale of 1 to 20.
Jeff.
It's the Lubies of steakhouses.
It ain't that bad.
It's decent at best.
It's a good steak for a nice price. You can go there. You can have you a nice beer, nice cold beer. Last time I looked, it was 33 degrees. Last time I was in Roadhouse. You're going to get a nice baseball steak, a nice baked potato. And you know what? You're not going to have to break the bank to do it.
Nope. That's
Heaven
right.
fucking forbid, Jeff.
Yep.
Heaven forbid. Copper Creek. You're insane.
They sent me a gift card.
They should have. The
They
way
did.
you were fucking
I sent me a
railing for them.
$250 gift card. I said, thank you very much. Me and Michelle will get us 2 meals there.
No,
2 meals
it'll
and a
get
couple
you
of drinks.
That'll get you an appetizer and a margarita.
It's $150 to eat there for a nice meal. Nice sit down, nice service.
Nice service.
They have great
Nobody
service
has
there.
nice service. We're in the middle of COVID.
They did.
Nobody
Copper
has
Creek.
nice service.
Yes, they do.
Nobody
Copper
has
Creek.
nice service. Everybody's hurting.
If you go to Abilene, Texas, you want a good steak, go to Copper Creek.
Well, yeah, they're sending you gift cards.
Tell
Let
him
me
Jeff-
think of some
tell
place.
him, tell him Jeff Stanfield sent
Let me
you up
think
there.
of some place that I want to have a gift card from, and I'll plug them.
Does-
I really hope that you got a
Does
gift card.
Roadhouse really have gift cards even?
I'm sure they do, Jeff.
Do they?
Applebee's does.
That's another horrible place.
I'm not on Applebee's.
That's horrible. P.F. Chang's is good.
P.F. Chang's ain't bad.
It's very good. All right. Thank y'all for listening to us. God bless y'all. Have a great weekend.
I'm going to go to Roadhouse after this. Check out all of our sponsors. Check out Gundog Outdoors, Goose Creek Retrievers, Bang Tail Whiskey Eyesight Drone Service, Stanfield Hunting Outfitters, Looking Glass Duck Club Podcast, Lucky Duck, Dirty Duck Coffee, Boss Shot Shells, Dive Bomb Industries, Pacific Calls, and Shin Gear Waiters.